I think it's pretty accurate the way that we felt like it was after Game 4. Right there in Game 2, 3, 4, special teams plays a huge role. 5-on-5, thought we were pretty solid. And then I think even if you're trying to sum up and say, like, they just made a few more plays, and I think their depth, and especially because you see it on the power play, like their high-end offensive weapons is just a little bit too much for us.
So how important is it going to be this offseason to add some players who can make those high-end plays? That
is the most challenging thing for us as an organization as we go through this, is how do you acquire 40-goal, 100-point guys without doing it through the draft? That's a challenge, and that's what we'll organizationally we'll get to work on.
Is it easier to like see the silver lining 2 days later, 3 days later, about how your younger players and the experience they got, and seeing LaPierre score that goal and all those things that you saw and down the stretch with those guys?
Not yet.
No, still too raw.
Yeah, there's. We'll reflect back, and I think even though you're disappointed with the result, you still can be appreciative and very positive about some of the things that you saw within a disappointing result. And you just referenced one of them. LaPierre steps up, scores a huge goal in Game 4. Mikey in Game 2, I thought that start to the game and him getting on the board. So there's a ton of positive moments within a disappointing finish that, and when we look back, like those players, and when we talk to them and look at areas where they're going to have to grow, is you can reference those situations and you hope that they learn from those individually from going through it, having seen it, and now it motivates them and pushes them to find a different level or find another level inside of their own individual game, which we'll look for this summer, and we'll push those guys to make sure that they come back, and hopefully when you see them on this ice in September, it looks like they've taken another step physically and mentally when they hit the ice.
Hendricks was saying unprompted after the game the other night that he wants to work on getting stronger, work on his face-offs. I'm guessing part of that is a product of going up against the Trocheks and the Zibanejats for 4 games. But how much value is there in that for him, but also in him being able to see TJ Oshie get ready to play 4 playoff games, and just everything that he's gone through over the last 12 months, and for that matter, Mikey too.
Yeah, you referenced sort of two separate points, but so there's a prime example of Lappy and McMichael struggle in the circle in the series. They're going up against one of the best to do it in the National Hockey League. So one of the best in the world on the dot, Vincent Trocheck. So they get a on-the-job experience and understanding and learn and feel it, what that's like. And then they go, whoa, I'm not at that level. So I got to figure out how do I get to that level, strength, time, all the stuff that goes into it. So they just went through that experience, which you would now, Lappy, to his quote, is that's eye-opening, and now he's going to do something about it. And that's how you become a better player and grow and develop, is you see those situations, you get coaching, you're coachable, but also you're motivated to go, I got to get good in the circle so that I can compete with that guy right there.
Was Hendricks given the option to go to Hershey, or did you guys just feel like that was best for his development to go down there and help them?
Just for his development to go play all those guys.
So this kind of is in reference to the question I asked a minute ago. It might be kind of one and the same. We talked about adding high-end players. How important is it to get faster as a team, to just like actual foot speed to be able to skate with some of these faster teams?
Probably when you start to break down the individual player, what attributes do we need to add? Size on the back end, I think about. Speed is right up there. And you can tell, what sticks out is Lappy, right? Lappy's foot speed jumps off the page when you're standing there on the bench, and as I'm sure it jumps out to our fans and people watching, is his foot speed makes a difference. And so when you have one of those guys, but we need more of that inside of our lineup, no question.
Spencer, I'd ask this question I asked the other night, like, that was maybe too in the moment for, but do those guys, the guys we're talking about, the younger guys, simply need to take a larger percentage of the production next year?
You know, I think that's tough because now I don't want to get too much into the upstairs and
Sure.
management stuff, but to thrust and expect Connor McMichael to become Braden Point, I don't think that's fair. To score 40 goals and be a 100-point guy, I just don't think that's fair. Am I saying that Connor can't do that? I'm not. But to say and expect him and Lappy to be 100, like those are very, very unique players. So we'll see where their path goes, and we'll help them develop and grow. And that's my job to. But I think those are really, really almost elevated. Can they be 25, 30 goal guys? Can they play third, second line? Yeah, I think they can. And if they really pop, you know, maybe that isn't too unrealistic. But I just think we have to be careful and temper expectations and just go like that. All of a sudden, just because someone is picked in the first round is going to be Braden Point or Nikita Kucherov or Artemi Panarin.
How do you view the goalie situation going into the offseason?
We have two really good goaltenders. I know Chucky had a phenomenal year, and Kemp's struggled at times, but also played well at other times. And I think, like I said all year long, I think it was just a product of Chucky having such an exceptional year that he took the ball and ran with it and became the every night guy down the stretch.
You didn't really get the chance to answer about TJ.
Yeah.
I mean, you talked about the other day, just what he went through this year. What does that?
Yeah.
What kind of message does that send the whole team in watching that?
I think just not just going through the injuries and what he's battled through, but just how he carries himself, the amount of preparation, how he. I notice it so much on the bench and how he plays inside a game. He just has so much poise in pressure situations where a lot of times guys lose their cool. They start to panic. The moment becomes overwhelming where he's just so poised and so under control and knows the right things to say. And so those, I'm just referencing one area of what TJ brings to the group and what young players can pick up for however many games he played, and then especially into the playoffs. And just everything that he's about. He's just such a quality person, teammate, competitor, and that there's so many. He just has so much to offer when it comes to what he does on a daily basis, and people watching that and listening to him.
What's your message to Ovi? Strong second half. We know what he did in the playoffs. He was pretty hard on himself the other night after the game.
I think I talked about it after the game. It really challenging year, long year. Felt like we were in the playoffs for 3 months, and the second half that he had, and the amount of production, and how much we relied on all of our top guys coming down the stretch. Because the other thing that I didn't bring up, but this is sort of something that I was thinking about from a minutes deployment, top guys, John Carlson, I'm trying to remember how many blowout or where we're up 3-goal games did we have this season?
2.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry.
So when you think about that, we're playing games going down to the buzzer almost nightly. It's almost 82 games, unless we were getting beat and the score became lopsided against us. So we just had to play in those situations where the physical part is one part, but the other part is mentally having to stay in that game right to the buzzer ends every single night. And so you do that for 3 months, and it takes a toll on you. And isn't 28 years old anymore. Like he's a veteran player, and we asked a lot of him, and I put a lot on him as our captain, and he takes a lot of pride in leading the way and doing the right things and helping win a 2-1 game. And so I just think they're from a mental and physical fatigue standpoint, he went through a lot this year.
Were his minutes the other day, when he was kind of limited in the first 2 years because of that, or was there some theory behind that?
No, I was trying to get a different matchup with that line and trying to use him in more of an offensive role with him, Sonny, and Lappy. and just trying to do my job and keeping them away from some of the New York lines. So there was a few instances where we got doubled up and had to make some adjustments on the fly. So it wasn't a plan for his. I don't know exactly what he played in the first, and then the lack of power plays. Like the first 3 games, we had especially early in the game, there was more power plays than what we had the other night.
Overall, for you in your first year as the head coach here, just how do you reflect on this season?
There was a lot of adversity, a lot of highs, lows. Feel like at times we were here, and then it was like here, and then we would come back up, and so it was a really, really special group. I can tell you that, and being able to stand behind the bench and coach these guys and watch how I'll always remember this group for the resiliency and the never give in attitude that these guys had. I could reference 10 different games this year where as a staff going into the game, we felt like, this is getting as close to we need to win this game, or this might, playoffs might not be realistic for our team. And like the one, probably I'll just mention this one because I've mentioned a bunch of others. Seattle game was a huge game, that back-to-back coming off the loss in Edmonton. But the Mentors trip game in Boston coming from Florida, a few of our staff members, and I think like that game changed our season. It was, we had struggled, and I think it was coming out of the break. Lost at home to Montreal, lost again in Florida. And it was just teetering, and the Mentors were there, and the game that we played that day, it just gave us a lot of belief and energy, and the Mentors were there, and it was just our best game of the year thus far. So I think that was a turning point that I'll remember that game. And the only other thing I'd say, big picture, which for me was probably my biggest challenge this year, was managing our lineup and how much that changed. And I'll sort of reference this, like injuries, everybody goes through that and changing things, but I felt like we had to do so many things as a staff to try to manipulate our lineup and find matchups and move guys around. And so every night for me, and that's the first time I've experienced that, is we never really had like 1, 2, 3 like lines that were solidified. We moved all around all year with different centermen. We found different roles. Dowd's line wasn't that staple. It had to get moved around a little bit. So, and in game we had to do some certain things to protect matchups. In every game we had to find ways to maximize our group. So that was a challenge from a coaching standpoint. We spent a lot of our time trying to figure out on a nightly basis how we could set our lineup up for success, and as a head coach, not just roll 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. We had to move things around, or I had to move things around all year, which I'm a better coach for it, but it was a lot. It was a lot.
I asked you before the first game, would there be emotion? Your first game as a head coach, and here you are in a blink of an eye, we're at the end. What have you learned about yourself in this whole process?
Well, I've lost a few years off my life from this season. A few more gray hairs if I grew it out. It was a tremendous experience. I mean, this year and experiencing, I knew the fan base and the building. I could speak about our guys all day long, and the leadership, and how impressive a group they are to be around and having coached. But I'll mention and I said this before the playoffs, our coaching in Washington and the fan base and the Rock the Red and the enthusiasm around town and people coming up to me, whether it's in Virginia or downtown D.C. or in Maryland where my son plays, you genuinely can feel this is a hockey town and people love the Washington Capitals. And I felt that in the community, and then you get into Capital One Arena and feel that on the bench, that was really special to be able to go through, especially some games where we really got rocking in there, and it was tight and it was going to overtime, and I'll remember that and hopefully get to experience that for a lot of years to come.
On your last regular season game, one thing Ovi said after was, getting ready back into the playoffs, and he said, and it's the coaching staff's first time going into the playoffs. So I'm wondering, with guys like Ovi, Carlson, Oshie, with them having so much experience, what was your conversations kind of like with them? As you mentioned, the last 3 months of the season, it felt like you guys were in the playoffs, and your staff has never experienced that at the NHL level before. Yeah,
it's I've never mentioned this, but at the beginning of the year when I met with those guys, because of where we're at as an organization and team, and I said this to them. I said, you guys have done some incredible things in your careers. John Carlson, World Junior Champion, you're all Stanley Cup champions, you've done Rocket Richard winners, all these different things that these guys have accomplished in their careers. President's Trophy, just go down the list, individual and team. And I genuinely believe this from looking at, to get this team back in the playoffs for you guys is going to be the most difficult thing you do in your career. Because you're going to have to now, as players, as veteran players, that you're not in the prime of your careers anymore, you're going to have to not only carry the load on the ice, but you're going to have to lead this group of young men. And that's what, from a standpoint of me being proud of that leadership group and those guys, because they can't just go out on the ice and go, okay, just jump on my back, I'll just go end to end and score. They can't do that anymore. But what they did was they put everything they had on the ice and then led and then drug young players into the fight. And to get this team back into the playoffs, given our roster and given where we're at as an organization, I felt like is a feather in their caps of their careers that won't go down. It'll be very low on their list when you look at their Hall of Fame careers. But to me, one of the most impressive things that they've done.
Maybe it's that mentor's trip game that you mentioned, but 20, 30, 40 years from now, you're retired, you're sitting at the kitchen table. What's the one moment that you're telling your family about?
I would say the first win, but I felt like I remember that Calgary game. I feel like there was so much, because we didn't play that well, and we were under attack in that game. I remember just shots. I looked up at the shot clock. I want to say it was like 12-1 in the first 5. Everything was coming to our net. I would probably say the Philadelphia game that I'll remember, because we had been battling for so long, and for it to come down to one game, winner take all, we win. And coming on a back-to-back, so we fly in and we get there and everybody's exhausted, we train. And to just grind our way through that game, and it wasn't pretty in true Caps fashion this year, and just trying to find a way. We get the empty netter, and I think just the relief and that we achieved it, because even though you believe that you can, the whole time you're believing, okay, we're going to find a way, but you don't until it happens. It's hard to say, like, we knew this was going to culminate. And so when that moment came where the buzzer, because even when they had the goalie pulled and it's 2-1, you're like, they still have a chance to tie this game, and it goes to overtime, and we needed the 2 points. So I'll never forget that game, and I think it's just a true representation of our group this year. The resiliency, the back-to-back, the on the road, both teams playing for something, and in odd fashion, but we find a way to win a game and get back into the playoffs.